Have you ever had that feeling where you're watching a character you've known for years, someone you genuinely trust, and then suddenly you see a look in their eyes that changes everything? That's exactly what happened this week on Coronation Street. We've all seen George Shuttleworth as the big, friendly guy who takes care of the dead with dignity. He's the moral anchor of the street, right? But as he sat in that cold police station across from DS Lisa Swain, I started to wonder if we've been completely wrong about him. Was this really just a man trying to protect his friend? Or are we looking at a man who finally snapped and did the unthinkable? The truth George is about to tell Lisa isn't just a confession. It's a bomb that's going to level everything we thought we knew about the night Theo Silverton died. Does George actually have it in him to kill? Or is he just the world's most loyal fall guy? You have to admit, in a place like Weatherfield, the nicest people always seem to have the biggest secrets buried deep. Could George be the one who finally decided to take the law into his own hands? To really get what's going on in that interview room, we have to look back at the nightmare Theo Silverton brought to the cobbles. Theo wasn't just a bad guy, he was a master of making people feel small. He spent over a year systematically tearing Todd Grimshaw apart. Think about it. He monitored what Todd wore in a full-length mirror. He forced him into these exhausting exercise routines, and he used violence whenever he felt like he was losing control. George didn't just see this from a distance. He had a front-row seat to the destruction of a man he cares about like a son. When you watch someone you love get hollowed out by an abuser, your own sense of right and wrong starts to get a bit blurry. George's choice to step in wasn't just about being a good mate. It was an instinctive, almost primal need to stop the bleeding. Now, let's talk about that night, May 1st, 2026. Everything reached a boiling point. Todd had finally gone to the police, but we all know Theo wasn't the type to just pack his bags and leave quietly. Then Betsy Swain finds a body under the scaffolding. Suddenly, George is caught in a mess of his own making. He's holding a bloody sweater and giving a weak alibi that wouldn't even convince a toddler, let alone a detective like Lisa Swain. Why is he talking now, though? That's the real question. George is a man who deals with the dignity of death every single day. Seeing Theo, a man who brought nothing but pain, dead on the ground probably felt like the universe was finally balancing the scales. He likely felt that if the law wouldn't protect Todd, then he had to. Think about what George must be feeling internally right now. He's probably vibrating with a mix of total terror and this strange, twisted sense of relief. He's spent weeks watching Todd look over his shoulder. There's a lot of guilt there, too. Paternal guilt is a heavy thing. George feels like he should have seen the signs earlier. Every time he looks at Todd, he sees his own failure. That's why he's willing to risk everything in that interview. But I want to look at this from a different angle. Is George's arrest actually a failure? Or is it a subconscious surrender? Look at the evidence. He didn't burn that sweater. He didn't run away. This is a man who buries people for a living. He knows exactly how to make things disappear. The fact that the sweater was even there for Christina to find tells me he wanted to be caught on some level. It's a cry for help from a man whose conscience is just too heavy, I have to say. I think George is being incredibly naive here. By telling Lisa his truth, he's handing the police exactly what they need to close the file. I really disagree with him trying to handle this alone. He has Adam Barlow right there, but George is speaking from the heart, not a law book. In a murder investigation, your heart is usually the thing that gets you a life sentence. The psychology of this is fascinating. It's what you'd call a protector complex. George's whole ego is tied to being the steady hand on the street. When Theo challenged that by abusing Todd right under his nose, it wounded George's sense of self. His actions aren't just about Theo dying. They're about George trying to feel like a man who can fix things again. But you can't fix a murder. You can only survive it. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the bloody sweater debate. Forensics found George's fingerprints and blood on that jumper. George claims the blood is from a scuffle he had with Theo at the flat earlier that day. Now, they did report that incident to Kit, so there's a record of it. This is where the writing is just brilliant. If George is telling the truth, the blood is a total red herring. But if he killed Theo later that night, it's the smoking gun. That uncertainty is why we can't look away. George admits he went for a walk to calm down while Christina went to get Todd. A walk in a soap opera is basically code for, I was doing something I can't prove. It's a huge gap in the story that the police are filling with their own suspicions. George is so used to being trusted that he thinks his word is enough. He's realizing way too late that in a murder room, they strip your reputation away first. And what about Christina? She's the one who found the sweater. Can you imagine the betrayal she must feel? Or the paralyzing fear that the man she loves is actually a killer? She's panicking, and she's the one pushing him to talk to Lisa, because she can't carry that weight herself. She's basically acting as George's external conscience. But then things get even messier. We have the mystery of Todd's missing phone. The police didn't even take it. Instead, we saw some mysterious person removing the SIM card. That phone is the digital soul of this whole case. If George is the one who took it, he's a lot more calculating than he looks. But if it was someone like Gary Windass, then George is just a convenient distraction. The fact that the phone ended up in a pawn shop with Brody's fingerprints on it just adds more chaos to the mix that I honestly think the police are being short-sighted by focusing on George just because of a jumper. It feels like Kit and Lisa are under a ton of pressure to get a win, and George is the easiest target. In my opinion, the real killer is probably sitting back and watching this all unfold with a massive sigh of relief. George is too obvious. And on the cobbles, the obvious choice is almost never the right one. I'm predicting that George's confession won't actually be him saying, I killed him. He's going to confess to being there or seeing something, but he'll try to take the fall to save Todd. This is going to blow up in his face when the evidence from the phone points to someone else entirely, maybe Summer or Gary. George will be stuck in a legal nightmare of his own making. We also have to talk about the Summer Spellman factor. George found her journal, and that entry about putting a gun to Theo's head is honestly chilling. Is George playing a game of suspect roulette now? He's terrified by what he found, but he's also protective of Summer. When he tells Lisa the truth, is he actually trying to point the finger away from her? Summer is dealing with a massive guilt complex right now. She's even willing to plead guilty to manslaughter just to make the nightmare stop. George sees this, and it breaks him. He sees a young girl willing to throw her life away, and his Undertaker's soul can't stand the waste of a life. His confession might just be a clumsy attempt to give Lisa a different story, so Summer doesn't have to go down. There's also this tease from James Cartwright, the actor who played Theo. He mentioned a twist that we won't see coming. He said it would recontextualize everything. That's a big word for saying we're going to have to look at everything differently. Was George in the background of the wedding photos doing something suspicious? Did someone else change their clothes? George's truth might be the spark that forces the real killer to come forward. Or maybe the truth isn't about who killed Theo, but who didn't save him. We know Theo left Billy to die in that crash. Maybe George or Todd saw Theo in trouble and just stood there. Legally, that's not murder, but to a guy like George, it probably feels like it. If the twist is that George just watched him fall, that would be incredibly powerful. It keeps him as a good man, while showing that dark, vengeful side that Theo brought out in everyone. While all this is happening, the rest of the street is falling apart. Daniel is being harassed by a troll called Truth Teller, and Jody is messing with David and Shona. This isn't just background noise. It shows a community where trust has completely died. George's confession is happening in a world of suspicion. If the most trusted man on the cobbles, the man who handles your loved ones, is a killer, then who can you trust? Weatherfield is suffering from a collective trauma right now. The safety of the street is gone. George sitting in that station is the symbol of that loss. So, what happens next? I think George's business is done. Even if he's innocent, the reputation of Shuttleworth's is in the gutter. Who wants a murderer planning their funeral? I bet he'll have to sell. Maybe to someone like Debbie Webster. And Todd? If he finds out George is taking the fall for him, his mental health will completely shatter. We might see Todd try to confess himself, leading to this big moment where everyone is claiming they did it. And then there's Kit. He's the wild card. I think Kit knows George is innocent, but is using him to squeeze the real killer. Look at the environment of George's arrest. Lisa didn't just pick him up. She quizzed him. That word suggests a real psychological battle. Lisa isn't just looking for facts. She's looking for a crack. George is an Undertaker. He's trained to stay calm when things get grim. That makes him a tough nut to crack. If he's too calm, he looks cold. If he panics, he looks guilty. He's probably dealing with a lot of internal conflict. In his head, he's a good man. But if he had to hit Theo to save Todd, he has to find a way to live with that. His confession is him trying to tell a story where he's still the hero. And that sweater? It's not just clothes. For an undertaker, it's almost like a shroud. You wrap the dead in a shroud to give them dignity. By keeping that bloody jumper, George was basically shrouding his own guilt. He couldn't throw it away because that would be like trying to hide from the truth forever, and that goes against everything he stands for professionally. I really feel like the writers are using George to talk about the good man syndrome. We tend to forgive people for doing bad things if they have good reasons. I don't agree with fans who say he's innocent just because he's nice. Niceness can be a mask. I think George did strike Theo, and I think he's actually proud of it, even if he's scared of prison. That's much better drama than a simple frame-up. Let's talk about Todd's ordeal for a second. That surprise wedding Theo threw at him was the ultimate move of a control freak. It forced Todd to act happy in front of everyone while he was dying inside. When George heard Theo's outburst right after that, it wasn't just noise. It was a physical blow to George's world. He realized the charm Theo used was a weapon. The weight of that is what's pushing him to confess. He's not just confessing to a crime. He's confessing that he was blind to what was happening to his friend. Todd's stress levels were at a literal melting point. George saw himself as the person who had to cool things down. If the truth he tells Lisa is that he ended Theo to save Todd, he probably sees it as a medical necessity. Like cleaning up a body, he was cleaning up the street. Then there's the truth-teller troll targeting Daniel. Does this person know everyone's secrets? Could the troll be the one who took the SIM card? If George is confessing based on what he thinks happened, he might be missing the bigger picture. The digital world is way ahead of him. I have a sneaky feeling Jodie Ramsey is way more involved than she's letting on. She's been stirring up trouble and manipulating everyone. If she's truth-teller, she might have been the one who pushed George to talk. I think she's the real villain here, and George is just a pawn in her game. And don't forget the missing phone. Fans are looking at Miles or Gary, but what about Tyrone? He's been carrying a lot of guilt about being dishonest. He saw Carl messing with Kevin's brakes and didn't say anything. The street is basically a house of lies right now. George's confession is just one more lie or one more truth in a pile of them. If Tyrone was recording Carl on his phone, maybe he caught the murder by accident? If George knows about that footage, his talk with Lisa might be a way to get ahead of it. Tyrone is motivated by saving his own skin. George is motivated by helping others. That's the big contrast here. George is the good man doing a bad thing for a good reason, while Tyrone is the good man doing nothing for a bad reason. The rumors of a tragic ending really have me worried. Tragedy usually means the hero falls because of their own mistakes. If George goes to prison, it's a tragedy because the street loses its heart. But if the truth is that Todd did it and George is covering, then the tragedy is Todd's soul being destroyed. Todd is hoping someone can save him, and George is trying to be that guy. But you can't save someone from the truth. Todd is feeling this massive existential dread. He's lost his abuser, but now he's losing his best friend to the police. He's being pulled in so many directions that he's basically paralyzed. Now, let's look at the jumper again. Fans noticed George changed his clothes. In a soap, you don't just change your clothes for no reason. It's about identity. George was trying to shed the violent version of himself and go back to being the steady Undertaker. But the blood, that literal and metaphorical stain, didn't go away. This is what you'd call symbolic cleansing. He thought that by changing his clothes, he could change what he did. His confession is him finally realizing that you just can't wash the truth away. He's sitting there in a clean shirt, but he's finally admitting what happened in the bloody one. I really think the big twist is going to involve Sarah Platt. There are 4 clues linking her to Theo's death, and she's been acting so strange lately. She's been attacked, she's drinking, and she's lost her confidence. Sarah might be dealing with reactive aggression. After being a victim, she might have snapped. If she saw Theo attacking Todd, she might have acted with a level of violence that even she didn't expect. And George might have seen her. If he did, his confession is actually a sacrifice. He's lived his life. Sarah has kids. George might be trying to bury Sarah's guilt along with Theo. That would be the most George thing he could ever do. Then there's the dashcam footage. Lisa mentions seeing Brody on the street when he said he wasn't there. This means there's visual proof of where everyone was. If George is confessing, he has to make sure his story fits the cameras. He's not just telling a story, he's editing it. I actually think the dashcam might be what saves him. It might show him walking away from the scene when the murder happened. That would mean his confession is a total lie. Can you imagine the scene between George and Lisa? Why are you lying to protect a killer, George? I have a feeling the final twist won't even be a person. What if it was an accident? What if Theo just tripped and fell while George or Todd were shouting at him? No one pushed him. He just fell. But because there's so much hate for him, everyone assumes it was murder. George's confession might just be a confession of wishing he was dead, which he's confused with actually killing him. In a place like Weatherfield, is wishing someone dead just as bad as doing it? So, do you think George is actually capable of cold-blooded murder? Or is he just a desperate friend trying to fix a broken situation? And what about that mystery figure taking the SIM card? Was it Gary? Miles? Or maybe someone like Tyrone? The jumper theory versus the journal clue. Which one do you think is the real key to finding out what happened to Theo? I want to hear your theories. Drop them in the comments, seriously. I read all of them. Who do you think the mystery figure was? Coronation Street is absolutely on fire right now. This whodunit is one of the most complex stories they've ever told. George is at the center of it, and whether he's a killer or a saint, the cobbles are never going to be the same. If you enjoyed this deep dive into George's confession and the psychology of the Theo murder, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps me keep these deep dives coming. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next breakdown. We've got more spoilers and theories on the way, especially regarding Sam's psychosis and what that means for the plots. Let's look at the forensics for a second. The police couldn't get anything off the phone. That failure of tech is what makes the human confessions so important. If they can't prove it with data, they have to prove it with a person. George knows this. He's old school. He doesn't trust data. He trusts a man's word. His confession is a way of saying, stop looking at the screen and look at me. It's an ego play. He wants to be the one to end the tension. That bloody sweater is like a relic to him. In a religious sense, a relic carries the spirit of a martyr. To George, that sweater carries the spirit of the night Todd was saved. He couldn't destroy it because it was the only proof of his own courage.